Welcome, my family. Before we jump in, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and family. I'd also love to know, where are you watching from and what time is it there? Please hype me on YouTube. Thanks. I never meant to come back to Denton. The town smelled of heat and frying oil, and the sky always looked baked. I'd escaped 6 years ago, but after losing my job and my apartment, I drove back with my car full of boxes in shame. Mom's voice on the phone had been syrupy. "The house has missed you, sweetheart." Not I missed you. The house. She opened the door before I even knocked. Lipstick, pearls, the same floral dress she used to wear when Dad was still alive. Her eyes skimmed me like inventory. "Look at you," she said. "So thin. You must be starving." The smell wrapped around me. Fried onions, lemon polish, something faintly sweet. She made me sit before I could protest. A plate of eggs, toast, and milk appeared like magic. "Eat first," she said. "Then we'll talk." I ate out of habit. The eggs were oily, the milk cold and oddly sweet. When I asked what kind it was, she smiled. "Just drink, baby. You'll feel better." The way she watched made my skin itch. That night the house kept breathing after she went to bed. The air conditioner wheezed, and somewhere downstairs she was humming that same church hymn from my childhood. Just as I am. I dreamt of a mouth chewing in the dark. Every morning after, she was already in the kitchen before sunrise, skillet sizzling, humming that same hymn. "Sleep well, baby?" Yes, I lied. The milk showed up again. I drank it because her eyes said I had to. It left a film on my tongue. "You're too pale," she said, brushing my hair from my face. "We'll fix that." By the third day, I realized she hadn't let me touch a single chore. "Rest," she said. "City life wore you out." When I mentioned looking for work, her voice hardened. "Work can wait. Mama's fixing you." That night, the smell of bleach drifted from the kitchen. I went down for water and found her standing in the half-light, a knife glinting in her hand, something raw and pink in a bowl beside her. She smiled without surprise. "Couldn't sleep? What are you making?" "Your midnight snack," she said softly. "You used to cry if I didn't feed you at night." I backed away. "I'm not hungry." Her gaze followed me up the stairs. Some hungers never go away. By the week's end, the curtains stayed closed. The air felt heavy, sour with grease. I started sweating through my shirts. My jeans fit tighter, though I barely ate. At breakfast, she served soup, thick, milky, and faintly metallic. "Just like old times," she said. I swallowed one spoonful and gagged. "Mom, it tastes weird," her smile flickered. "Your body's just getting used to real food again." I set down the spoon. She grabbed my hand, her fingers cold. "Eat a little more. For me." Her voice was gentle but wrong, like a knife wrapped in lace. I escaped outside, gasping for air. The sunlight hurt my eyes. Across the yard, Mrs. Clancy waved from her porch. "Your mama says you're still sick," she called. "You look better, though." Sick. So that's what Mom told them. When I came back in, she was washing the same knife under a stream of pink-tinged water. "Chicken," she said before I could ask. "Fresh from the market." Her smile didn't touch her eyes. That night I dreamed again of mouths, wet, rhythmic, endless chewing. I woke to find the taste still in my throat. The next morning I told her I was going into town. "Why?" "I need air. Maybe see if the diner's hiring." She froze. "You just got here. You think you're too good for this house?" I sighed. "I just need to get out for a bit." She turned away, trembling. "After everything I've done for you." Then quieter. "Eat first, then go." The pancakes glistened with dark syrup. I forced a bite. "New recipe?" "Homemade," she said. When I returned that afternoon, she was already waiting on the porch, hands clasped like in prayer. "Didn't find what you were looking for?" "No, I knew you'd come back. Lunch is ready." By nightfall, I was shivering with nausea. My skin felt too tight, my reflection swollen and glossy. I barely made it to the sink before I vomited. Thick, pale, metallic. From the hallway came her humming again, calm and patient like a lullaby. When I looked up, she was standing there in the doorway. "It's okay, baby," she whispered. "Your body's just adjusting." Her smile widened, thin as wire. "Soon you'll be perfect again." After that night, I stopped eating. I'd pour the milk down the sink, hide bits of food in napkins. My stomach ached, but the hunger was cleaner than the sickness. My reflection was swelling, though I could see it. My face looked soft like it was filling from the inside out. Mom noticed. She always noticed. "You're wasting away," she said, standing by the stove, hands clasped too tightly. "You were doing so well. I'm fine." Her smile stretched, thin and trembling. "You're not. The body fights what it needs at first. What's that supposed to mean?" She just turned back to her pot and stirred, humming her hymn, "Just as I am," like a secret she wasn't ready to tell. The next morning, I found blood under the sink. Not a drop. Sheets of it dried to the wood. A rag stiff with brown stains. In the fridge, a glass jar labeled broth. The liquid inside was thick, milky, and gray. The smell made my stomach lurch when she caught me staring at it. Her smile never faltered. "Don't snoop, sweetheart. You wouldn't understand. Try me." "You were sick," she said simply. "You needed feeding." That night I locked my door. But the house had its own voice, the groan of wood, the whisper of slippers. Through the vent above my bed came her humming, soft and rhythmic, and underneath it, the sound of chewing. On the 8th day, she brought breakfast to my room. Oatmeal, toast, and milk. I said, "I'm not hungry." She sat on the bed, tray balanced on her knees. "Eat, baby, please." Her eyes were wet, her lips trembling like she might cry. For a second, I almost did too. I took the spoon just to make her stop looking at me. The first bite turned to metal in my mouth. I spat it out, gagging. "What is this?" Her voice sharpened. "You used to love my cooking." "Mom, what's in it?" She blinked once, then smiled, too calm. "Me." I stared at her. "I gave you life once," she whispered. "And I'm giving it again. Don't you see? You were hollow, dying inside, so I shared myself with you." I shoved the tray off the bed. The bowl hit the floor, spilling thick gray mush. Her face hardened, then broke into something almost tender. "You always were a picky eater." That night I went to the kitchen. The fridge light cut through the dark. Jars filled every shelf, some cloudy, some with lumps floating inside. Each had masking tape labels. Mara, 812, Mother, Reserve. Dyke, 2009. My stomach turned to ice behind me. "Couldn't sleep, baby?" I spun. She stood in the doorway, her face half shadowed. "What are these?" I hissed. "Family," she said softly. "Everything I've ever fed you, every piece I've kept safe. Love doesn't vanish, Mara, it transforms." "You're insane," her smile quivered. "Don't call me that. You were dying before I saved you. I'm leaving. You can't. You're part of me now. You wouldn't survive out there." She stepped closer. The light hit her face, pale, slick, glistening with a thin film of sweat. Her pupils were blown wide. "I kept you alive with my body," she said. "You owe me yours. I ran." The front door wouldn't budge. The bolt was rusted shut. I fled upstairs, heart hammering, slammed my old bedroom door and pushed the dresser against it. Below, her humming rose again, louder, dragging through the air like a prayer. "Just as I am. Just as I am." My stomach twisted, sharp pain blooming under my ribs. I pressed a hand to it, something moved. No, the world tilted. My skin itched, pulsed. The sweet smell of milk filled my head until I thought I'd choke on it. I blacked out. When I woke, the house was quiet. The morning light slanted through the curtains. My throat was dry, my body weak. I stumbled downstairs, half dreaming, half starving. She was at the table, waiting. "Pancakes, bacon, syrup, milk." "Morning, sweet girl," I shook my head. "No more," her tone softened. "You'll eat when you're ready. You always do." The smell hit me, warm, sugary, safe. My stomach growled. I hated myself for it. "Go ahead," she said. One bite, I reached out, trembling, fork in hand. The syrup shimmered dark red. I hesitated, then hurled the plate across the kitchen. It shattered, her face crumpled. "After all I've done for you." I ran to the basement door. The smell was unbearable. Sweet rot. Bleach, something cooked too long. Rows of jars lined the walls, their contents floating pale and shapeless. In the freezer, slabs of wrapped meat. Labels scrawled in marker. Dad, Mara, Mom. Behind me, her voice trembling now. "You weren't supposed to see this yet. You killed him. He left us," she whispered. "But he still feeds us." "Jesus, Mom." She stepped closer. "It's not murder if it's for family." I shoved past her, bolting up the stairs as she screamed my name. Her voice followed, breaking into sobs. "You'll come back. You always come back when you're hungry." I drove until the sun came up, until the highway unspooled behind me like a scar. My hands were shaking, skin slick with cold sweat. Every gas station, every diner reeked of the same thing: grease, milk, sugar I couldn't eat. I couldn't even drink water without tasting her. Weeks passed. My body thinned, bones jutting sharp again. But sometimes at night I'd wake with my tongue coated in sweetness. Once, I swore I heard her humming through the vent in my apartment. I told myself it was memory. Then, this morning I opened my fridge. A mason jar sat on the top shelf, pale liquid sloshing softly inside, masking tape label across the lid, neat feminine handwriting. Mara, fresh. I hadn't seen my mother in 9 years when she called to say she'd been making my favorite. Her voice hadn't changed, syrupy, polite, and sharp enough to cut skin. Even after all this time, it made me sit up straighter. I told myself I was just visiting for the weekend. But the moment I stepped into her house in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, I felt the walls lean in like old conspirators waiting to finish what they'd started. The air was thick with butter and something burned beneath it, a smell I remembered from childhood. The scent of her kitchen discipline. She hugged me too tightly, nails grazing my spine, and whispered, "You got thin again. I'll fix that." Her lipstick left a red half-moon on my cheek. It felt like ownership. The house looked smaller. The lace curtains were yellowed now, but still pinned perfectly at the corners. Every photograph, birthdays, graduations, even the one of my father before he left, was still in the same frame, the same exact position on the wall. There was a kind of defiance in that sameness, like she'd frozen time on purpose. The kitchen gleamed under that dim, honey-colored light she liked. Everything sparkled, except the knives. They sat on the counter, freshly washed but not quite dry, the edges winking like small secrets. "Sit," she said. "You'll like this better when it's hot." I obeyed automatically. The first bite was familiar and wrong at once. Chicken and cream and something metallic underneath. She smiled when I chewed. "See? You still love it." I didn't answer. The meat was tender but dense, too soft in the middle. She kept watching. "I used to ask for thirds. Remember that? I was a kid. You still are. You never really grew out of me." She laughed, then pressed the serving spoon against my plate, letting the sauce spill into the mashed potatoes. "Eat." I forced another bite. It was good. Objectively good. But there was something unnerving in how she watched, how her pupils didn't move when I did. Like she was waiting for something else to happen. Something the food was supposed to fix. "Do you still get those stomach aches?" she asked. "Not really." "Good. You always worried too much. It made you hard to feed." After dinner, she refused to let me help clean. She stood at the sink, back straight, scrubbing with quiet intensity. I saw her reflection in the window, lips moving but no sound. When I asked what she was saying, she said, "Just thanking the Lord for another meal together." The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence between us. I hadn't realized until that moment how loud silence could be. "Where's the cat?" I asked. She didn't look up. "Which one?" "The white one, Muffin. You sent me pictures last year." Her scrubbing slowed. "Oh, that one ran off." Then after a pause, or maybe she didn't, I forget. I didn't push it. I just said I was tired and went upstairs to my old room. It looked exactly as I left it. Floral bedspread, bookshelf with the same 5 novels, trophies lined up like soldiers. Even the old poster of Audrey Hepburn was there, edges curling, eyes faded. The air smelled faintly of bleach and something sour beneath. I tried to open the window, but the latch wouldn't budge. It was painted shut. When I lay down, the mattress groaned under me. The ceiling had a faint crack running down its middle, splitting it like a healed wound. Somewhere downstairs, a pan clattered. Then faintly, I heard her humming. That same lullaby she used to sing when I was sick. "Hush, little baby," drawn out off-key. I pulled the blanket up, even though the room was warm. The sound of her feet pacing below felt rhythmic, practiced. I woke sometime past midnight to the smell of boiling. It hit me before I was fully awake, that meaty, greasy scent that clung to the air like fog. I heard the bubbling sound, heavy and constant, then her voice soft, humming again. I slipped out of bed and padded down the stairs. The kitchen light was on. Steam fogged the windows. She was at the stove, stirring something in her old enamel pot. Her hair was pinned back, her housecoat buttoned to the throat. The clock behind her read 3:12 a.m. I said her name unquietly. She didn't turn. When she finally did, her smile was too wide. Couldn't sleep? No, what are you making? Your favorite, she said again, but we already ate. I know. Her eyes flicked toward the pot, then back to me. I wanted to get it right this time. I took a step closer. The steam parted. The smell was wrong now, not just meat, but hair wet and burning. My chest went cold. What's in there? She didn't blink. You were such a picky eater. I looked down into the pot and saw something pink, fibrous, soft. Floating strands. Short, fine, the color of my hair when I was 12. I must have gasped because she tilted her head, almost pitying. Don't look at me like that, she said. You wanted to remember, didn't you? I just wanted you to remember where you came from. My throat closed around 1,000 things I couldn't say. She reached out, brushing her hand down my cheek like I was still her little girl. The skin of her fingers was hot, damp from the steam. Go back to bed, she whispered. You'll feel better in the morning. I didn't move for a long time. The clock ticked once, then stopped. By morning, the kitchen was spotless again. The pot was gone. The counter gleamed. Even the air smelled lighter, faintly lemon-scented, as if the night had been rinsed away. My mother stood at the stove frying eggs, humming the same tune. Morning, sweetheart, she said without turning. You slept well. I didn't answer right away. My tongue still tasted of metal, and I wasn't sure if I'd actually slept at all. When she slid a plate in front of me, I stared at it too long. The eggs perfect, the toast square, the butter melting just so. I'm not hungry, I said. Her smile stiffened. You need to keep your strength. Travel's exhausting. I just need coffee. Coffee's not breakfast. I'll make it myself, I said, and reached for the pot. Her hand closed around my wrist. Warm, firm, deliberate. Sit down. Her voice wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. It was the same voice that used to stop me mid-scream when I was a kid. I sat. She watched me eat the first bite, eyes steady like she was timing every chew. The food was fine, maybe even good, but the way she looked at me made my skin feel too tight. When I finished, she dabbed the corner of my mouth with a napkin. There, see? Isn't that better? I nodded just to make her stop touching me. I tried to keep busy that day. I went through the attic pretending to look for old photo albums, anything to keep me away from the kitchen. Dust coated everything. The air was dry, heavy with insulation and the faint sweetness of decay. I found a box labeled Lindsay Growth Years. Inside were report cards, school photos, drawings I barely remembered making. And tucked at the bottom, a stack of recipes in my mother's handwriting. Each card was titled with my name. Lindsay's First Stew, Lindsay's Sunday Special. One was splattered with something brown and sticky, the ink smudged. Beneath ingredients it said, hair, fine, nails trimmed, fat, rendered slowly. I dropped the card before I could stop myself. It slid under a trunk. My pulse thundered in my ears. I told myself it was a joke. Her dark humor, the same kind she'd use when I was little. Don't waste anything, sweetheart. Everything can be made into something new. But when I went downstairs again, she was sitting in the living room, folding napkins with surgical precision. On the coffee table were 3 labeled containers. For my daughter, don't waste this. I froze. She looked up, smiling. I packed some leftovers for you. You never eat enough when you leave. What's in them? She blinked slowly. You'll find out when you need to. I felt dizzy. The air felt heavier now, the smell of disinfectant stronger. I should go, I said. So soon? You only just got here. I have work on Monday. You always say that. When I moved toward the door, she stood, blocking it with that graceful, practiced motion of hers. You don't have to leave yet. I can make lunch. Mom. Lindsay. She said my name like it was a full stop. Her smile didn't move this time. You think you can run away from the things I made you from? The things I fed you? Something inside me cracked. What are you talking about? She stepped closer, lowering her voice. You came from me. Every piece of you. You eat my food, you breathe my air, you dream my dreams. You don't get to leave that behind. Her breath smelled faintly of rosemary and metal. Her hand cupped my cheek. Do you remember what happened the last time you left me, sweetheart? I didn't. You starved, she whispered. You came back half of yourself. I had to make you whole again. I pushed her hand away. That's not true. Her smile faltered, then returned, brittle. Of course it is. Everything I do is for you. When she turned back toward the kitchen, I saw her shoulders tremble, a brief, unguarded shiver. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I went upstairs to pack. The window latch still wouldn't move. I pried at it with a penknife until the paint cracked, then slid the glass open. The air outside smelled of rain, sharp and alive. For a moment, I thought about climbing out and just running. Then I heard it, the sound of a knife tapping the counter downstairs. A rhythmic, deliberate click. I grabbed my bag and ran. She was at the bottom of the stairs, holding a wooden spoon like a conductor's baton. Leaving already? I need to go. You forgot your containers. Keep them. Her face stiffened, then softened into something worse. Calm. Fine, she said. But you'll be hungry again soon. Outside, the sunlight felt unreal. The road shimmered. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel all the way back to the motel. I told myself I'd never go back. That night I showered 3 times, but I could still smell her kitchen on my skin. Butter, salt, and something darker underneath. I threw the motel window open. The air was cold and wet. On the nightstand sat my duffel bag. I didn't remember bringing it inside, and there it was, one of the containers. The white label neat and perfect. For my daughter, don't waste this. I didn't touch it. Not that night. Not the next morning. But by the 3rd day, hunger made me curious. I peeled back the lid. Inside was stew, pale, pinkish, and smooth. It smelled almost sweet. There was a note taped underneath the lid. See? You still love it. I flushed the food down the sink. The smell clung to my hands for hours. That night, I dreamed of her humming again. The same lullaby, off-key, drifting through the motel walls. When I woke, my stomach hurt like I'd swallowed something alive. Weeks have passed since then. I moved apartments, changed numbers, blocked her on every account. But every few days, a small package arrives on my doorstep, no return address. Always the same handwriting, always the same neat label. For my daughter, don't waste this. The latest one came yesterday. I threw it away unopened, but later that night, I swore I could smell butter burning, faint, distant, and achingly familiar. I looked out the window. Across the street, a light was on in the house opposite mine. A figure stood in the kitchen, stirring something on the stove. She turned, slowly. And even from there, across all that darkness, I knew that smile. It was waiting for me to come home, and of the taste of her cooking. When Mom called, her voice was too soft, like she'd been practicing it. She said, "You should come home for a few days, darling. The house misses you, the house, not her." That was how she always phrased things, as if the house were alive and she was only its caretaker. It had been almost 6 years since I'd last stepped inside. 6 years since Dad's funeral. Since the endless silence after. I told myself I was only visiting for a weekend and to make sure she was okay. To prove that her guilt still worked on me. The drive to Elkhart, Indiana, felt longer than it should have. The road was empty except for the bare trees bending toward the asphalt, their shadows slicing the windshield in even intervals. By the time I reached our old street, the sun had gone, leaving the sky a dull violet that bled into gray. The house looked the same, white siding, clean shutters, curtains drawn tight, but there was something wrong with the light inside. It didn't glow, it glared. Through the front window, I could see the sharp shine of something metallic, too reflective for comfort. Mom opened the door before I knocked, her lipstick perfectly even, her smile a tight mask. "Lila," she said, the name trembling at the end like a note too long held. She hugged me, her arms stiff as wire, her perfume stinging my eyes. Rosewater with a hint of ammonia, the smell she always wore on Sunday mornings. "I made everything ready for you," she said, stepping aside. Her voice had that precise rhythm again, the one that made every sentence sound rehearsed. Inside, the air was colder than outside, though every vent hummed, and the smell, not like home but sterile, like glass cleaner and stale bread. All the pictures that once covered the hallway, the family trips, my school photos, Dad's fishing pictures were gone. The frames were still there, hung neatly in rows, but each one empty. When I asked about them, she said, "Dust collects behind photographs. I like to keep things open." I didn't press further. With Mom, explanations were walls, not doors. She guided me upstairs, her heels clicking like clock hands. When she opened the door to my old bedroom, I felt a strange dizziness. It wasn't how I'd left it. The lavender wallpaper was gone, replaced by smooth white paint that reflected the hallway light like porcelain. And covering the walls, floor to ceiling, were mirrors. Some were old, ornate, framed in brass or mahogany. Others were modern, plain, the kind you'd find in dressing rooms. They faced each other endlessly, bouncing fragments of me back and forth until I wasn't sure which reflection was mine. Mom clasped her hands behind her back like a curator. "You'll sleep here," she said. I swallowed hard. "Why the mirrors?" "They help me keep things real. Sometimes memories drift." Her eyes darted to one mirror on the far wall, a tall, narrow one with a split down the middle, like it had been cracked and glued back together. "I didn't want you to forget how you looked." That night, I lay awake in bed trying not to move because every time I did, 100 reflections followed me. The sound of the house and the ticking. The air vent, her footsteps downstairs, felt amplified, as though the mirrors themselves were listening. At around 2 a.m., I saw movement and a flicker of something in the far mirror. Mom, she was standing in the doorway, not moving. Her face turned toward the glass instead of me. The reflection caught her perfectly. Her eyes open, lips parted slightly, whispering something I couldn't hear. When I sat up, she turned her head, not fast but slow, mechanical, like a puppet waking from sleep. "Go back to bed," she said. Her voice was calm, too calm. In the mirror, her lips didn't move when she spoke. The next morning she was cheerful, too cheerful. She made eggs and toast, humming a hymn I half remembered from childhood. I asked her why she'd come into my room. She didn't look up. "Oh, I didn't," she said, buttering my toast. "You must have dreamed it." Later, while she took her afternoon nap, I wandered the house. Every room was spotless but wrong in some small way. The bathroom had no soap. The linen closet smelled faintly of vinegar. In the den, all the books had their dust jackets removed, and every mirror that used to hang in the hallways, the ones Dad hated because they watched you, were gone. All except the ones in my room. By evening, the house began to feel like a loop. Every hallway led me back toward the stairs, and every glance at a reflective surface made me see something slightly delayed, like the reflections were a second behind. At dinner, she sat across from me and said, "You're thinner than I remember." "I've been working a lot," I said. "You should let me feed you. You were always such a fragile thing." Her eyes didn't leave mine, but in the reflection of the window behind her, she wasn't looking at me at all. She was looking over my shoulder, smiling at someone who wasn't there. After dinner, she handed me a cloth and said, "Wipe the mirrors before you sleep. They collect impressions." I almost laughed, but her face didn't suggest it was a joke. That night I did as she asked, partly to humor her, partly because the smudges looked like handprints. The more I wiped, the clearer they became until the room shimmered with my own. Uneasy face multiplied 100 times, and then I noticed one reflection was breathing. When I wasn't, I froze. The version of me in the cracked mirror tilted, her head slightly, eyes soft, smile too wide. Behind her, something moved in a faint shape, smaller, familiar. My mother. I stumbled backward, the cloth dropping from my hand. The air suddenly felt thick, heavy with polish and dust. When I turned toward the door, I saw her standing there again, her nightgown white, her face half hidden in the dim hall light. "Go to sleep, Lila," she whispered. The sound came from her, but the echo came from inside the mirror. I shut my eyes until I heard her footsteps fade. When I finally looked again, the mirrors were dark, reflecting only the outline of my own trembling body. But from somewhere deep in the glass, a voice, mine, whispered, "You look more like her every day." The next morning I woke to the sound of humming. It came from downstairs, a soft, rhythmic tune, almost like a lullaby. For a moment I didn't know where I was. The mirrors caught the daylight and turned it silver, bright enough to hurt my eyes. Each reflection of me blinked half a second off time. When I finally stood, one reflection stayed still, I tried to convince myself I imagined it, that maybe the angle was just different, but my stomach twisted, and something inside me knew better. I threw a blanket over the mirror and left the room. Mom was in the kitchen, washing dishes that were already clean. "Did you sleep?" she asked, not turning around. "Barely," she chuckled. "You always had nightmares in that room, even as a little girl." I didn't remember that, but I didn't argue. Her memories always had a way of replacing mine. She dried her hands and turned. "You should eat something." When she smiled, her teeth looked faintly gray, like something had worn down the enamel. She placed a plate in front of me. Scrambled eggs and toast, the same as yesterday. Perfectly symmetrical. I took a bite and stopped. The eggs were cold. "Mom," I said softly, "how long have you been alone here?" "Not alone," she smiled again. "You're here now." Her tone was sharp, final, as if I'd offended her by suggesting otherwise. I looked toward the hallway, where the sunlight hit a mirror leaning against the wall. For an instant, I saw something else reflected there. Not us in the kitchen, but the same scene frozen like an image from the past. Me as a teenager. Her sitting in that same chair watching me eat. Her face blurred by light. I blinked and it was gone. That night, I decided I'd sleep in the guest room downstairs. I didn't tell her. I just waited until she went to bed. The old grandfather clock struck midnight as I crept down the stairs, the wooden steps creaking under each cautious step. The air smelled faintly of bleach again. When I passed the hallway mirror, I caught sight of my reflection but my eyes were closed. I froze. My breath hitched. I leaned closer. In the reflection, myself, or whatever it was, opened her eyes and whispered, "She doesn't want you to leave." I turned, heart pounding. The hall was empty, but behind me the reflection kept moving. Then came the voice. My mother's. Not from the bedroom upstairs, but from the mirror itself. "Don't sneak away, Lila. You know I can't stand being left behind." Something in her voice cracked on the last word. I ran. The guest room door was jammed. I slammed my shoulder against it until it opened, stumbled inside, and shut it fast. It was pitch dark. I grabbed my phone for light, but before I could turn it on, a faint glow appeared from the corner. A mirror. I hadn't noticed it before. Tall, oval, draped with a black cloth. The cloth shifted, as if something behind it had exhaled, and then, in the reflection, I saw her. Standing behind me, I spun around, nothing. When I turned back, the reflection of her was closer, her hand reaching toward the surface of the glass. The mirror rippled, as though it were water. I stumbled backward, tripping over a rug. From upstairs came the sharp, rhythmic click of her heels. "Lila?" Her voice floated down, sing-song, almost sweet. "Did you clean the mirrors before bed?" The doorknob rattled. I held it shut. "Mom, stop!" I shouted. "What's wrong with you?" Her voice softened. "I just need to see you clearly. You keep fading." The door began to bow inward, once, twice, until the wood cracked. I bolted toward the window, but when I looked out, the reflection of the room in the glass wasn't the same. In it, Mom was already inside, standing right behind me. I screamed and swung the bedside lamp at the mirror. It shattered, shards flying across the floor. The noise stopped. No footsteps. No humming. Just my pulse hammering in my ears. When I dared to open the door, the hallway was empty. But the air had changed, thick with the smell of polish and blood. The mirrors lining the hallway walls gleamed in the dark, one after another, and in each I saw myself, but older, pale, my eyes hollow like hers. I moved toward the stairs, desperate to leave. At the bottom, the front door stood wide open, letting in the faint hum of night insects. For a second, I thought I was free. Then I saw her standing in the entryway mirror, not behind me, not beside me when her hand pressed against the glass, her mouth moving in slow motion. "Stay." I turned and ran for the door, but the floor shifted beneath me, slick with polish. I slipped, crashed into the mirror, and everything went white. When I woke, I was in bed again. Morning light streamed through the curtains. The house was quiet. For a few seconds, I thought I'd dreamed it all, until I sat up. The room was smaller, the air heavier, and the walls covered once again in mirrors. But it wasn't my face in them anymore, it was hers. Each reflection showed her at different ages, 20, 30, 50, all smiling that same perfect smile. I screamed and backed away, but the reflections didn't move with me. They just watched, all in unison, eyes glinting like silver coins. Outside, I heard the front door open, footsteps, then her voice, calm, cheerful, practiced. "Come in, sweetheart. The house misses you," a girl's voice replied, uncertain, young. "Thanks, Mrs. Adler. My mom said I should help with your groceries." I slammed my fists against the glass. The reflections smiled wider, their teeth sharpening under the light. "Mom," I whispered, though I knew she couldn't hear me, because I wasn't in the house anymore. I was the house guide, or rather, what she'd left in it. And as the new girl followed her inside, every mirror flickered with the same image, my mother smiling through me and behind her, 1,000 reflections whispering in perfect unison. We looked more like her every day. I used to think my mother was just overprotective. Even when I moved back to her house on June 3rd, 2023 after my divorce, she insisted on choosing my clothes, my meals, even what time I slept. She said it was for my health. I told myself she meant well. I'd lost my job the same week the papers were signed, and the lease on my apartment fell through. My last chance at independence had vanished, and there was nowhere left to go. She'd always said, "You can come home when you need to." I just never imagined home would feel like a cage. The house on Willow Drive in Spokane looked almost identical to the one in my memory. Pale yellow siding, white trim, rose bushes clipped into perfect spheres. The scent hit me the moment I stepped inside. Bleach layered over lavender, sweet and caustic like flowers drowned in chemicals. "Still spotless," I said, trying to sound casual. Mother's lips stretched thin and white. "It has to be," she murmured. "Clean means safe." The walls gleamed as if newly painted, but the color seemed off, too pale, as though the life had been scrubbed out of it. Even the air felt filtered, heavy with that chemical perfume. It didn't just smell clean. It smelled preserved. She insisted I take my old room. "I kept it just the way you left it," she said. That wasn't true. The furniture was rearranged. The curtains were new. There were no photographs on the walls, none of my father, none of me. Only framed white lace pressed under glass. That night, I unpacked in silence while she hummed somewhere down the hall. It was a lullaby I half remembered from childhood, one that used to make me cry for reasons I could never explain. The next morning, she made me oatmeal, no sugar, no salt. "Sugar feeds disease," she said. I joked that heartbreak wasn't a disease. She didn't laugh. When I reached for coffee, she took the mug from my hand. "You're shaking," she said. "I'm fine, Mom, just tired." Her lips thinned further. "You've always been tired. You'll feel better once you rest properly." I tried to remind her I had things to do, a job interview, a lease to sign. "I need my car keys," I said. "I'm meeting the property manager on Monday." She didn't answer, just wiped an invisible speck from the counter. "You're not ready for that kind of responsibility yet." By afternoon, my phone charger had disappeared, so had my shoes. She called it tidying. At night, the scent of lavender grew heavier, almost syrupy. The air itself seemed to pulse with it. I woke around 2 a.m. to a faint shuffle in the hallway, like someone dragging fabric across the floor. When I opened my door, everything was still. Then I noticed the nursery mobile hanging from my doorknob, painted wooden moons and stars yellowing with age. "Mom?" I whispered. Her voice drifted from the living room. "Just keeping things in their place." The next morning, she'd set a baby's hairbrush on my dresser, pale blue plastic with clean white bristles. "Remember this?" she asked, smoothing my hair like I was 5. I pulled away. "Why are you doing this?" She glanced toward the crib she'd dragged into the corner. The bars gleamed, freshly painted. "It's been waiting for you to come home," she said softly. The words unsettled me more than I could admit. Later that week, she began closing the curtains earlier each evening. "The sun brings dust," she said. Without sunlight, the rooms felt underwater. I caught myself staring at the walls. Moisture glistened where the paint met the trim, like the house itself was sweating. The smell thickened, bleach and roses and that cloying lavender, the mix of something meant to cover rot but never quite succeeding. I started keeping windows open a crack when she wasn't looking. Each time she closed them again. "It's unsafe," she said. You'll let the sickness in. I asked what sickness. She just smiled, not warm, not brittle, just absent. When my phone stopped turning on, I blamed the charger. Then I noticed the outlet was dead. I tried another. Nothing. Power's out in my room, I told her. No, sweetheart, she said without looking up from her sewing. The repairman already came. It's fixed. But the lights, it was a storm. You must have slept through it. There hadn't been a storm. The sky outside was clear, colorless as bleach water. I tried the fuse box, but the door to the basement wouldn't open. The knob turned loosely like the lock was fake. That night, she brought me warm milk before bed. The smell was faintly sour. I pretended to drink it. When I set the glass aside, she looked almost hurt. You never finish what I give you, she said. Because I don't need it, Mom. Her lips pressed together in something that wasn't quite anger. Everyone needs their mother. She left the room humming. When I woke, the glass was gone. On the 5th night, I heard her voice through a baby monitor that hadn't been there before. The red light glowed on my nightstand. Such a good girl, she whispered. Mommy's so proud. I froze. Mom? I called. The light went dark. I didn't sleep again that night. The smell of sour milk lingered. By morning, she was cheerful, humming as she mopped the hallway. You were talking in your sleep, she said. Kept calling for the baby. What baby? Her eyes softened. The one that's coming. I started planning to leave that day. I'd find my keys, walk to the neighbors if I had to. When I reached the front door, it wouldn't open. The lock turned, but the door wouldn't budge, like something heavy pressed against it from outside. Mom, did you bolt the door? She appeared behind me, calm as ever. You're safest here. People are disappearing, haven't you heard? I stepped back, my voice trembling. I want to go. Her gaze drifted past me toward the window. You always say that, but you always come home. That night, she didn't knock before entering. She just stood in the doorway, watching me in the dark. Do you remember your lullaby? She asked. I shook my head. She began to hum. The same melody from my dreams. It grew softer until I wasn't sure if I was hearing her or the house itself. I began losing time. Some mornings, I'd wake dressed in clothes I didn't remember putting on. Once I woke with my nails trimmed. Perfectly even. She said I'd done it in my sleep. The air in my room shimmered faintly, as if from heat, though the vents blew nothing but cold. The wallpaper was peeling now, edges curling outward like old skin. Beneath it, something darker showed, stains that looked like fingerprints dragged downward. When I asked about them, she said, just old memories surfacing. Don't pick at them. I tried to remember my ex-husband's voice, his name, even the sound of the city I'd left, but it all blurred together, replaced by the rhythm of her footsteps down the hall, the hiss of bleach water in her bucket. The hum of the house was constant now, a low vibration that matched my heartbeat. I woke one night to find her sitting beside my bed, eyes half open, smiling faintly in the glow of the nightlight. Mom, I whispered. She didn't answer. Her head tilted slowly like a doll's. When I touched her wrist, her skin was cold. She blinked, then rose in one smooth motion and left the room. The smell of lavender followed, sharp and dizzying. In the hallway, I noticed wet footprints, hers, leading toward the nursery door. Except we didn't have a nursery. She'd turned her old sewing room into one. I saw it the next morning, though she'd told me to stay out. The walls were painted a pale yellow. The crib gleamed. A rocking chair sat by the window, and on the floor, laid out in neat stacks, were baby clothes, my baby clothes, freshly ironed. When she found me staring, she didn't scold. She only said, "It's almost time." By now the walls dripped steadily, moisture beading in the corners. The air buzzed faintly when I pressed my ear to the plaster. The scent had changed. Less lavender now, more something sweet rotting beneath it. I began writing everything down in a notebook, hiding it under my mattress. But each morning the pages were blank again, though the pen still warm from use. When I confronted her, she looked pleased. The house keeps what we can't, she said. Her eyes glimmered. It remembers for us. That night I heard crying through the monitor. A baby's cry, thin, wet, desperate. I ran to her room, but she wasn't there. The sound came from the nursery. When I opened the door, the crib was empty. The crying stopped. Then I noticed the mirror above the dresser, fogged from within. My reflection stared back, mouth open as though it had been the one screaming. Days blurred, she no longer cooked. I found food waiting in my room, bowls of mush, bottles of milk. I tried to throw them away, but each time, more appeared. The smell had become unbearable, sour milk and roses. When I begged her to let me leave, she only stroked my hair. "You already left, sweetheart. You just don't remember." I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror later that night and froze. My hair was shorter, my skin smoother, my face softer, like hers. I gripped the edges of the sink until my knuckles whitened, forcing myself to think. My name is Rachel. I'm 32 years old. I had a husband, a job, but the harder I tried, the faster those words dissolved. When I blinked, I saw her standing behind me in the reflection, smiling faintly. But when I turned, the hallway was empty. The next morning, she called me baby in a tone that made my stomach twist. I didn't answer. She tilted her head, studying me. "Still fighting it," she said softly. "That's good. Babies fight too." She pressed a small rattle into my hand. It was mine. I recognized the faded sticker on the handle. "It belonged to you," she whispered. "Now it will again." I dropped it. The sound echoed far longer than it should have. Later, I found her sealing the windows with thick plastic sheets. "For insulation," she said. Sunlight turned the plastic cloudy, tinting the house in a dull amber glow. The air grew syrup-thick. My lungs burned. Every breath tasted like bleach and roses. The night it happened, I woke to the monitor again. A faint heartbeat pulsed through the static. Too slow to be human, then her voice. "She's ready." The door opened without sound. She stepped in, carrying something swaddled in white. Her face was soft, radiant. "You can rest now," she said. "I'll take care of everything." I couldn't move. My limbs felt heavy, my vision dim. She placed the bundle in my arms. It was warm but not alive. When I looked down, I saw a blur of fabric, a lock of hair, my own. I screamed, or thought I did. The sound came out as a broken whimper. She smiled, pressing a finger to her lips. "Shh, you'll wake her." I woke inside the crib. The bars loomed high, impossible to climb. The room smelled of milk and disinfectant. A soft lullaby drifted from nowhere and everywhere. My body ached, my hands small and weak. My voice gone. Only a rasping breath escaped. The mirror across the room shimmered like water. Two figures stared back, a woman and a child. But their faces flickered, merging until I couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. Mother leaned over the crib, her eyes bright, her lips pale. "See?" she whispered. "Perfect again." I tried to speak, to say her name, to remind her who I was, but the word caught in my throat. What came out was soft, broken, almost tender. Mama. I moved back home after my father died. Just me and my mother in that suffocating two-story house at the end of Ridgeview Lane, Pennsylvania. The street itself felt forgotten. A thin stretch of cracked asphalt curling toward the woods like something trying to hide. Most of the other houses had "for sale" signs rotting in the yards. Ours, though, hers, still stood perfect. White siding scrubbed to shine, blinds shut tight, porch light still burning through the day as if the house feared the dark. Mom met me at the door wearing her old lilac robe. Her hair was pinned too tightly, her smile stretched thin and deliberate. "You look tired," she said, as if exhaustion was a moral flaw. When I stepped inside, the air hit me, lavender detergent and antiseptic, a scent that clung to my throat. Every surface gleamed, mirrors, picture frames, the glass fruit bowl that had never once held real fruit. She kept the house spotless because she said dust remembers sadness. I set my suitcase in the hall. "Just for a little while," I told her. She nodded, though her eyes flickered the way they used to when she didn't believe me. "Of course, sweetheart. You always come back." That first night I slept in my old room across the hall from hers. Everything looked the same. Pale wallpaper with faint roses, the corkboard still pinned with high school ribbons and outdated photos. Even my old comforter, sun-faded, stiff from storage, was back on the bed. She'd recreated it all. down to the smell of lemon polish on the dresser. When I lay down, the air hummed with quiet, except for the faint rhythm of breathing through the vent between our rooms. Slow, measured, intentional. At first, I told myself it was just her snoring. But the breaths didn't sound accidental. They were too deliberate, like someone mimicking calm. Sometimes I thought I heard my name stretched between the exhale. Mara. I pressed my pillow over my ears, but the sound seemed to slip through the fabric and into my pulse. In the morning, Mom was already in the kitchen. Bacon sizzling, radio low. She moved with mechanical grace. "Sleep okay?" she asked, smiling at her reflection in the microwave instead of me. I heard, "Breathing," I said, immediately hating how childish it sounded. She looked amused. "You used to breathe that way too. You just forgot how." That was the first time she said it. You just forgot how. Over the next few days, her eyes never left me. When I washed dishes, I could see her reflection in the window behind me. When I folded laundry, she hovered at the doorway. Once, when I walked past the dark TV, I caught her reflection staring directly at me, though her back was turned. I started closing the bathroom door when I brushed my teeth, but even then, I could hear her moving outside, slippers whispering against tile. "I'm just keeping you company," she'd say, tapping her nails on the frame. You hate silence, but the silence was all her. It pressed through the walls, heavy and watchful. One evening, I tried to go for a drive just to breathe air that didn't smell like her perfume. When I came back, she was waiting at the top of the stairs, robe cinched, face still. "You didn't tell me where you were going," she said quietly. "I'm 31, Mom. I know. But when you leave, the house changes. It gets colder. I worry." That night, the breathing grew louder, slow inhale, long exhale. Almost matching mine, like a duet I hadn't agreed to. I stared at the vent's silver grill, wondering if she was sitting awake, listening for me the same way. I shoved a towel inside the vent opening. The next morning, the towel was gone. When I asked about it, she said, "Maybe you dreamed putting it there." Then she touched my cheek with cold fingers and whispered, "You used to dream all sorts of things." By the end of the second week, I started losing track of hours. I'd wake and the light would already be fading, even though I swore it was morning moments before. Mom said I slept too much. My coffee tasted wrong, too sweet, metallic. She insisted it was the same brand as always. Sometimes she'd hand me a mug already waiting on the table, steam curling in perfect spirals. "Drink up, dear," she'd say. "We need our routines." I didn't remember her making it. She watched my breathing constantly, when I yawned, when I sighed, even when I laughed, which happened less each day. Once during breakfast, she said, "You breathe unevenly now. You used to follow mine. We were in sync, remember?" "No, Mom, I don't." "You will." That night, I locked my door. Around 2 a.m., I heard her turning the knob, then a slow dragging sound like metal scraping wood. In the morning, the door stood open. The hinges were gone. She'd taken them off completely. When I confronted her, she smiled. "Doors divide families. You shouldn't want barriers between us," I shouted, really shouted, and she just looked delighted, like the sound proved something. Later, she made soup and set it quietly in front of me. "Anger means you're still trying to resist," she said. "I love that about you." I didn't eat it. That evening, I found her in the hallway, standing perfectly still, eyes half closed, listening. Her lips moved without sound. When I stepped closer, she whispered, "We sound alike when we breathe through our mouths. Listen." And she inhaled sharply, matching me. I backed away. The next morning, my pillow was damp, as though someone had pressed their face against it all night. My throat felt raw, my chest heavy. I thought maybe I was getting sick. But then I noticed faint impressions beside my head, 2 hollows perfectly shaped like another face had rested there. I moved to sleep on the couch downstairs. She came down in the night anyway, lying on the floor beside me, whispering, "Don't fight it, honey. You came home so we can match again." After that, I stopped sleeping. I spent the night sitting in the living room with the TV muted, staring at its dark reflection. The house made strange sounds, tick of cooling pipes, groan of floorboards, but underneath it all was that rhythm, in, out, in, out. Once I thought it was the wind until I realized the windows were sealed shut. I tried calling my friend Leah, but the phone cut out before she picked up. The dial tone that returned wasn't steady. It pulsed like a heart monitor. I checked the basement to find the fuse box, thinking maybe I could shut off power to her room vent. The air down there was damp, metallic. Against the far wall hung dozens of cassette tapes, each labeled in my mother's neat handwriting. Mara, 6:04 breathing. Mara, 8:12 breathing sleep. Mara, 10:21 with Dad snoring faintly. My stomach turned. I found an old player and pressed play. The sound that filled the basement was unmistakable. My breath, uneven, frightened, recorded years ago. Then her voice faint. Don't forget, we share the same air. I smashed the recorder and ran upstairs. She was waiting in the kitchen, calm as ever, stirring tea. You shouldn't go through my things, she said without looking up. You'll disturb our rhythm. I wanted to leave, but outside the fog was so dense it looked solid. The street lamps were blurred halos. Every direction looked the same. I drove half a mile before realizing I was back at the same mailbox at the end of our driveway. Ridgeview Lane was looping on itself, or maybe my mind was. I parked, shaking. Through the upstairs window, I saw her silhouette watching, her head tilted slightly in time with my panicked breathing. By week 3, reality thinned. The house felt alive, pulsing faintly under my feet. Mirrors fogged when I exhaled near them, even when the air was cold. Sometimes in reflections, our faces overlapped for a moment, hers over mine. Once I tried holding my breath to see if she'd stop too. She didn't. Her breathing kept echoing through the vent, steady and unbroken. I decided to record the sound myself as proof. That night I left my phone beside the bed, mic on. In the morning I played it back. The recording was hours of slow breathing, identical to mine. But halfway through my voice whispered, in, out, followed by her reply, that's better. Keep the same rhythm. I don't remember speaking. When I confronted her, she only said, you make me so proud. You're learning again, I wanted to scream. Instead, I packed a bag. She stood by the stairs, blocking the way. You can't leave halfway through a breath, she said. You'll suffocate out there. I'll take that chance, I said. She reached for me, nails digging into my wrist. You think breathing is just air? It's memory. It's everything we shared. I pulled free and ran outside. The air was cold, harsh. I gasped, really gasped, and for a moment felt relief. But then my chest seized. My lungs burned like something inside resisted. I stumbled, clutching my ribs. From the doorway, she whispered, You're taking my air, sweetheart. You can't survive without me. I collapsed on the porch. The world dimmed. I remember her palm pressing against my chest, guiding the rhythm. And out, until the panic dissolved into quiet. When I opened my eyes, I was back in my bed upstairs. Morning light through curtains. My wrist unmarked. For a second, I thought I'd dreamt it. But when I turned, she was sitting in the chair by my bed, smiling softly. See, you just forgot how, she said. Since then, days blur again. I breathe when she breathes. Eat when she eats. Sometimes when she leaves the room, I feel my lungs tighten, waiting for her return. The mirror fogs only when we're both in front of it. The house feels warmer, almost peaceful. Tonight, the air is still. I sit at my desk writing this. The vent hums softly beside me. I think about leaving again, but the thought fades as soon as I exhale. I can't imagine air without her scent in it. A moment ago, I thought I heard footsteps behind me. But when I turned, no one was there. Just the faint pulse of her breathing inside the walls, perfectly timed with mine. Sometimes I wonder if she's even in the house anymore, or if she's moved inside me completely. My chest rises and falls, steady, measured. I tell myself it's my own rhythm, my own life. But when I pause, hold the breath, I hear her voice from somewhere deep inside. Don't stop now, honey. We breathe together, and I do, because I can't remember what it feels like to breathe alone. I hadn't spoken to my mother in 7 years when she called and said, The house misses you. Not me. The house. Her voice came through the phone like a faint echo from another time. There was that calm, brittle tone she always used when she was hiding something sharp beneath it. I almost hung up, but curiosity slipped through the exhaustion in my chest. What do you mean? I asked. She sighed. It's been quiet here. The rooms don't sound right anymore. It was such an odd thing to say, and yet I could picture her there, standing in the same hallway where I used to count the cracks on the wallpaper. I told her I was busy with work, that I couldn't just drive out. But she said something that stopped me cold. "Sweetheart, I think your room's been waiting." By the time she said it, the line had gone soft and empty, like the call had ended, though I could still hear her faint breathing. I didn't remember agreeing, but 2 days later I was driving down the long stretch of highway toward Claremont, North Carolina, with the radio turned low and my stomach curling tighter the closer I got. The town hadn't changed much. The same diner, the same sagging church, the same faded billboard with the smiling family advertising local insurance. The only thing different was how everything felt smaller, shrunken, brittle. When I pulled into the gravel driveway, the farmhouse looked almost the same as it did the day I left. White paint peeling in long strips, porch swing hanging crooked, the air heavy with the smell of wet wood. But the windows looked dimmer, like the house had gone half blind. Mom stood on the porch perfectly still. She wore a pressed floral dress, hair pinned back like she was expecting company, not her estranged daughter. Even from the car I could see her lipstick, the same muted red she'd worn my whole childhood, a little too bright for her age. "Look at you," she said as I climbed the steps. Her voice was thin but smooth, practiced. "Still small, still stubborn." She hugged me. Her arms were cold and she smelled like lavender and dust. Inside, the air felt heavier, like it hadn't been stirred in years. Every clock in the house had stopped at 3:12. The kitchen clock, the one above the mantel, even the tiny one beside her bed. I asked if there'd been a power outage. She said, "It's just easier this way. Time doesn't argue when it's quiet." She'd never been one for jokes. We ate dinner at the long oak table, the same one Dad used to polish every Sunday. She'd made roast chicken, mashed potatoes, peas, everything I used to love as a child, except it all tasted slightly off, like it had been seasoned with something old. She kept adding food to my plate, whispering, "You were always so small." Across from me, Dad's chair sat empty, but she kept glancing at it between bites as if waiting for someone to speak. Once her lips twitched like she was about to say his name. Then she smiled instead, a too wide, careful smile. After dinner, I offered to help clean up, but she waved me away. "Go rest. Your room's waiting." When I went upstairs, the hallway lights flickered weakly and the carpet made no sound beneath my feet. My old room looked almost identical to how I left it at 17. Pale wallpaper, white curtains, even the chipped vanity mirror. But something about the room felt rearranged, like someone had studied it and put it back together wrong. I unpacked my bag, turned down the bed, and realized the sheets smelled faintly of bleach and rosewater. I lay awake for a long time, staring at the ceiling fan that never moved and listening. Around midnight, I heard voices. One was hers, soft, deliberate. The other was mine. Not exactly my current voice, but an older version of it, slower, lower, whispering things I couldn't quite catch. The two voices murmured from the kitchen below, like they were talking over tea. When I crept halfway down the stairs, the sound cut off. Mom stood alone by the sink, drying silverware with trembling hands. "The radio was off. Couldn't sleep?" she asked without turning. "There was someone down here," I said. She smiled, not at me, but at the window. "The house carries voices. It remembers better than people do." When I went back to bed, I locked my door for the first time in years. The next morning, sunlight hit the walls in a strange way. Not bright, but pale, almost filtered through dust. I went into the hallway and the air smelled faintly like lemon polish and mildew. Downstairs, she was already cooking breakfast, humming an old hymn. As I passed the living room, something made me stop. All the family photos on the wall were different. The frames were the same, the order unchanged, but the images had shifted. In every photo where I stood beside her, I now stood behind her. In some, her smile looked broader, her eyes clearer, while mine seemed slightly blurred, fading into the background. When I pointed it out, she didn't even look up. "You always did like hiding behind me." The rest of the morning went like a performance. She made me coffee the way I used to like it, except too sweet. She asked about work, about my apartment, about the man I was seeing him, though I hadn't mentioned him. She knew his name. "How do you know about Sam?" I asked. She shrugged. "You always tell me everything." But I hadn't, not in 7 years. By evening, the air in the house had changed. Warmer, thicker. When I opened the back door, the hinges screamed like something alive. Outside, the garden looked half dead. Roses wilted, ivy strangled the fence, and a row of clay pots had shattered across the porch. "Don't go out there after dark," she said from behind me. "The house doesn't like it." Her tone wasn't fearful, it was obedient. That night I dreamed I was walking through the house barefoot, every door slightly open. In each room, someone was sleeping in my bed, sitting at my desk wearing my clothes. Their hair was longer, darker. Their breathing matched mine perfectly. When I looked closer, their faces were mine, each one a little older. I woke gasping, my hands gripping the sheets. The air was cold. The clock still read 3:12. I got up to drink water, but when I opened my door, the hallway was darker than it should have been. The light switch did nothing. The wallpaper rippled faintly as if the house was breathing. Halfway down the stairs, I saw movement, a figure standing in the kitchen doorway. I thought it was her until it turned slightly, and I saw my own face reflected in the dark window beside it. My reflection blinked a moment later than I did. I didn't scream. I just went back upstairs and locked the door. The next morning, Mom acted as though nothing had happened. She made pancakes, asked about my dreams, and told me I looked tired. When I said I was thinking about heading back to Asheville, her hand froze midair, still holding the spatula. "Oh, but you just got here." "I have work," she smiled. "You don't have to worry about that anymore." "What do you mean?" "The house doesn't let people leave when they're not ready." She said it calmly as though stating a fact. I laughed, nervous, sharp. "You're scaring me," her eyes softened. "Sweetheart, the house loves you. You just forgot how to listen." That afternoon, I packed my things. The air grew heavier the closer I got to the front door. The screen door latch stuck when I tried to pull it. Outside, the sunlight looked flat, almost painted on. "Mom," I said, "please open it." She didn't move. "You shouldn't fight it. The house keeps us safe until we match." "Until we what?" She stepped closer, her perfume, lavender and rosewater, filling the space between us. Her reflection in the glass moved before she did. "You'll understand soon." That night I didn't sleep. I sat at the window and watched the yard, the faint light from the porch flickering every few seconds. Once I thought I saw someone walking near the fence, a tall silhouette with my gait. I told myself it was the wind. When dawn came, she was standing in the hallway staring at my door like she'd been there for hours. "I made breakfast," she said softly. "It's still warm." I told her I wasn't hungry. Her lips twitched, a smile fighting its way through something darker. "That's not what you used to say." The day dragged. I tried calling a cab, no service. Tried the landline, dead. Even the clocks seemed louder in their stillness, ticking soundlessly in my head, though their hands never moved. In the afternoon, I found her in Dad's old study. She was sitting in his chair, holding one of his photographs. But when I leaned closer, I realized the man in the picture wasn't him. It was me, older, standing beside her. "Where did you get this?" I whispered. She didn't look up. "He came back before you did." I felt dizzy. "Mom, that's me," she smiled faintly. "That's who you'll be when you stop leaving." Something in her voice broke then. Not sadness, but relief. She reached out and touched my cheek. Her hand was icy. "You always come home even when you don't want to." The house remembers. I stumbled out of the room and slammed the door. My heart wouldn't slow down. I grabbed my car keys, bolted to the front door, yanked it open and stopped. The world outside looked wrong. The fields were gone. The trees bent inward like tall shadows reaching for the porch. The sky was the color of wet concrete. My car sat in the driveway, but the road beyond it looked blurred like it hadn't been used in years. "Sweetheart," she called from behind me. "Don't go where you can't be found." I turned and saw her reflection in the glass again, except it wasn't matching her anymore. It was mine, smiling faintly, lips moving out of sync. I slammed the door and ran upstairs. My room looked smaller, the ceiling lower. The mirror above my dresser showed a faint outline behind my reflection, her shape overlapping mine. I whispered, "This isn't real." The air answered, a faint, familiar whisper, the same tone as her voice. "It's always been real. You just forgot to stay." I remember screaming for her then, the sound echoing through the house like it had nowhere else to go. She came to the door and knocked gently. "Open up, sweetheart. You'll feel better once you rest." I pressed my back to the door. "You're not my mother," she laughed softly. "That's what you always say every time you come back." Every time. I don't know how long I sat there, maybe hours, maybe days. The light through the curtains never changed. The clock still read 3:12. My phone battery died days ago, or maybe it never charged. Sometimes I heard footsteps pacing in the hall, sometimes hers, sometimes mine. Eventually, hunger drove me out. The hallway seemed longer than before. The wallpaper patterns had shifted subtly. the flowers all leaning toward the door at the end. Downstairs, she was setting the table again. 2 plates this time. One in front of her, one across. The chair legs scraped softly as she pulled mine out. "I've been keeping it warm," she said. "It's not polite to keep the house waiting." The food was steaming, but the air around it was cold. She gestured for me to sit. I did, too tired to fight. We ate in silence. Then she reached for my hand, eyes glistening. "I used to think you left because of me. But you never really left, did you?" "I did," I whispered. She smiled sadly. "No, you only think you did. The house knows better." Her grip tightened. I felt the bones in my hand creak. Her reflection in the window behind her looked younger, smoother, like she'd shed years in seconds. I pulled away, but she held tighter, whispering, "You'll understand soon." "The house keeps us until we match. What does that mean?" I cried, her voice was barely a breath. "Until there's only one of us left." The lights flickered and I felt the air shift, the hum of something deep like the house exhaled. The walls trembled faintly. My reflection in the window turned its head before I did. Then everything went still. When I woke, the sunlight was pale again. The house smelled of rosewater and lemon. I went downstairs, but the table was set for one. She wasn't there. Her chair was empty. The clocks were gone. In their place on the mantel stood a new photograph, her and me side by side, both smiling. Except when I leaned closer, the faces were almost identical. Same eyes, same lips. I touched the frame and the glass was warm. From the hallway I heard humming, the same church hymn she always used to sing while cleaning. My own voice joined it before I realized I was humming too. I looked toward the mirror above the mantel. For a moment there was no reflection at all, just the faint outline of a woman in a floral dress smiling faintly. The phone rang once. Then again. When I picked it up, the line was static. Then through the crackle, a voice that sounded almost, but not quite, like mine whispered, "The house misses you." I moved back into my mother's house after my fiancé drowned in a boating accident. She told everyone it was for my healing, but the truth was simpler. I had nowhere else to go. My apartment lease had run out, my savings were tied up in paperwork I didn't want to touch, and grief had stripped me of everything except exhaustion. So I came back, to the house I'd grown up in, the one that always felt like a second skin I could never quite peel off. The house scent, lemon polish and old grief, clung to me as soon as I stepped through the door. It was as if the air itself remembered me, pressing against my skin in quiet recognition. Mom stood in the hallway, thin as ever, her hair pinned with surgical precision, a taut, unblinking mask of a smile on her face. "You look just like you used to," she said, and her voice trembled with a kind of triumph. The kitchen hadn't changed. Yellow curtains, floral wallpaper, the chipped blue teapot that whistled even when empty. I sat at the table, fingers tracing grooves I'd carved into the wood as a teenager. "It's strange being back," I murmured. "It won't be," she said, pouring tea. "It'll feel right again soon." That night, I couldn't sleep. The mattress sagged in the middle like it remembered every restless night I'd spent there. Every sound was amplified, the tick of the clock, the pipes breathing. Then came a rhythm that didn't belong to the house, a slow, deliberate breathing through the vent. I held my breath. The air moved again, in, out, steady, human. And then came my name, Lena. It wasn't a sound so much as a tug, something invisible looping around my chest and pulling. I sat up, trembling. The sound came again, softer. "Sweetheart." I told myself it was the wind, or grief. Grief makes you hear things. But even when I pressed a pillow over my head, the whisper slipped through, thin as thread, sharp as glass. By morning, she was in the kitchen, humming a church hymn as if nothing had happened. "Did you sleep?" she asked. "Not really." "Oh, you used to be such a light sleeper." I didn't reply. Her gestures were practiced. Buttering toast, stirring sugar, her motions too precise, as though she were rehearsing a memory instead of living in one. Days folded into each other. Small things began to vanish. my charger, my hairbrush, a ring Alex had given me. When I asked, she always said the same thing. "You probably misplaced it, honey. Grief does that." But when I found the hairbrush later, clean and perfectly arranged, it wasn't mine anymore. It was hers, the bristles packed with silver strands. She filled the house with her voice, soft, guiding, constant. When she spoke, it wasn't conversation, it was construction. Every word built a version of me that only she seemed to remember. "You've always hated change," she'd say. "You've always needed me to help you stay grounded. You've always belonged here." It became a rhythm, a script she recited until it started echoing inside my own head. One night I found my old blue journal in my dresser drawer. The lock had been pried open, the pages neat and wrong. My handwriting twisted into hers. "I am safe here. Mom takes care of everything. I shouldn't have left before. I will never leave again." Each page ended with my name. My chest tightened as I flipped through. "You rewrote this," I said the next morning. She turned from the sink, drying her hands. "I just fixed it up. You never liked messy writing." "These aren't my words." "Oh, sweetheart," she sighed. "You keep forgetting what you've written." Her tone wasn't cruel. It was patient, like a nurse correcting a confused patient. Later that day, I noticed the mirrors were gone. Every reflective surface covered in newspaper, taped carefully edge to edge. When I tore the paper down, from my bathroom mirror I caught my reflection. Pale, hollow-eyed, the corners of my face slightly unfamiliar. The contours looked like they were shifting to meet another shape. Then she appeared in the doorway. "You shouldn't stare like that," she said. "Why did you cover them?" Her voice was soft. "Sometimes mirrors hold on to old faces. They forget who they're supposed to show." "That doesn't make sense, doesn't it?" She stepped closer. In the mirror, her reflection blinked a breath before she did. That night, she came into my room. The clock read 3:17 a.m. She sat on the edge of my bed, her hand smoothing the blanket. "You're cold," she whispered. "I'm fine. You used to say that too." The mattress dipped under her weight. Her fingers brushed my hair, tracing the edge of my jaw. I could feel her breath against my cheek, sweet, stale, familiar. "When you were born," she said, "I promised I'd never let anyone hurt you, and I haven't." Her voice was calm. "You just need to stop fighting me." I wanted to move, to shove her away, but my body felt pinned, as if the air itself was pressing down. Her hum began again, the same tune that used to lull me to sleep when I was a child. Somewhere between one note and the next, I drifted. When I opened my eyes, sunlight had replaced her. The pillow smelled faintly of rosewater and something metallic. That morning I packed a bag. I didn't care where I went, I just needed out. When I rolled the suitcase down the hall, I saw she'd already locked the door and hidden the keys. "Going somewhere?" she asked. "I need air," I said. "You have air here. I can't breathe in this house." She tilted her head, that taut smile returning. "You always say that, then you remember." "Remember what?" "That the house keeps you safe." Her voice softened, becoming almost a whisper. "It remembers you, Lena. Better than you remember yourself." My throat tightened. "You're scaring me." "You said that last time too." "Last time?" I repeated. She just smiled. "When you left me, before the accident." I froze. "You mean Alex?" She blinked slowly. "Who's Alex?" That night I searched the attic for proof I wasn't losing my mind. The old photo albums were there, stacked neatly, labeled by year. But when I opened them, half the pages were wrong. Photos of Alex and me, gone. Our trip to the lake, gone. Every picture showed just her and me, year after year, our faces inching closer together in resemblance. One photo stopped me cold. I was sitting on the porch steps, wearing her robe, her pearls. She stood behind me, hands on my shoulders. Across the back, written in her looping cursive, the year she came home for good. I felt her before I heard her. The creak of the top step, looking through memories. You change them. I didn't change anything, she said softly. They just develop clearer over time. The attic light flickered. For a split second, I saw her face turn toward me, and it looked exactly like mine. The attic light flickered once, twice, then held steady. I blinked and her face was normal again, older, softer, but still watching me with that bottomless patience. You should come downstairs, she said. It's cold up here. Her tone was kind, but something inside me tightened. I set the album down and brushed past her. The air on the stairs felt heavy, almost syrupy, clinging to my skin. The scent of lemon polish and old grief seemed stronger now, filling my lungs with every breath. I wanted to open a window, to breathe something that wasn't her. But when I tried, the frame wouldn't budge. It was painted shut, layers thick and yellowed. By morning, I couldn't tell if I'd actually slept. I woke to find her sitting in the kitchen, humming that same slow hymn. The clock on the wall had stopped at 3:17 a.m. again. She looked up. Coffee? I need to go into town. What for? Groceries. A walk, anything, she tilted her head. You don't need to go anywhere. Everything you need is here. The room felt smaller with every word she spoke. Later that afternoon, the phone rang. The sound jolted me so hard I dropped the mug I was holding. It shattered across the tile. I picked up the receiver. Hello? A woman's voice answered, cautious, unfamiliar. Lena, this is Dr. Haverly from St. Joseph's. We've been trying to reach you. Your mother's estate and my mother's what? Her estate, dear. We need your signature. She passed 2 months ago. A hollow click. Silence. I stood there, frozen, the static still whispering in my ear. Slowly I turned. Mom stood in the doorway, drying her hands. Who was on the phone? It was nothing. Wrong number. You shouldn't answer strange calls, she said gently. They confuse you. The air in the kitchen felt wrong, like the walls were listening. I hung up and backed away. That night I found the phone cord cut clean through. I started writing things down, small reminders to keep myself anchored. The date, my name, my fiancé's name, the fact that he existed. But every morning the notes were gone. My handwriting erased, replaced with neat looping cursive. You are safe. You are home. You don't need to leave. My reflection changed too. At first it was subtle. The way my smile lingered too long after I stopped smiling. The way my eyes seemed to look back a second too late. But then I noticed something else. When I raised my hand, her reflection moved first. The next morning I found her in front of the bedroom mirror, brushing her hair in slow, rhythmic strokes. You look tired, she said. You always do when you fight it. She handed me the brush. Go on. I don't want to, her eyes softened. You always say that at first. The handle felt warm, like it had absorbed the shape of her grip. I dragged the bristles through my hair. Silver strands clung to them, shimmering like threads of web. That evening she cooked dinner. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes, exactly what she used to make when I was 10. Mom, I said quietly. The hospital called. They said her fork paused midair. They said you're dead. Her hand lowered slowly. That's a cruel thing to say. I'm not lying. You shouldn't repeat things you don't understand. They said it was 2 months ago. I was at your funeral. She smiled, faint but steady. Then who do you think's been taking care of you? I stared at her, my heart pounding. You're not real. Oh, sweetheart, she said softly. Neither are you. Not the way you think. She went back to eating as if nothing had been said. The scrape of her fork against the plate sounded like a clock ticking down. That night I dreamed of water. Cold, dark water closing over my head. A voice calling my name, not Alex's voice, hers. When I woke, my pillow was damp. My hair clung to my face like kelp. The clocks were still frozen at 3:17. I couldn't tell if they'd stopped or if time simply refused to move in this house. I went outside. Barefoot, the porch board slick with dew. The moonlight made the yard look silver and hollow. I ran toward the dirt road, the same road that led to the next house half a mile away. Behind me, the front door opened. Lena, she called. Come back inside. You'll catch your death out there. Her voice wasn't angry, just certain. Like she already knew I would turn around. I didn't. I kept running until the next porch light appeared through the trees. I pounded on the door, shouting for help. An old man answered, his face pale with surprise. Miss, are you all right? My mother, she won't let me leave. He blinked. Who? Mrs. Holbrook, she lives up the road." He hesitated. "That house has been empty since she passed." I turned. Through the trees, the house was dark, quiet, motionless. The windows reflected only the moon. He called the police. They said I was confused. Trauma, grief, exhaustion. They had words for everything except truth. They took me to a hospital overnight. White walls, clipped voices, the smell of antiseptic instead of lemon polish. I told them I didn't want to sleep. I told them she'd find me. They gave me something to help me rest. The last thing I remember was promising myself I'd never go back. I woke up to the scent of lemon polish. The mattress sagged beneath me, just like it always had. Sunlight fell through the yellow curtains. For a moment I thought I was dreaming, but then I heard her humming, soft, precise, steady. Mom sat in the chair beside the bed, hands folded neatly in her lap. "You had another nightmare," she said, "but you're safe now." I tried to speak, but my throat burned. "I was in the hospital," I whispered. Her head tilted slightly. "You say the strangest things when you're tired." I left. She smiled. "No, sweetheart. You were never gone." The house pulsed around me, breathing in sync with her words. I could feel it. The rhythm of her heart beneath the floorboards, deep and steady. "Here," she said, holding out the hairbrush. "It's yours." I took it. My fingers felt wrong, too thin, too pale. I ran the brush through my hair, slow and even. "You see?" she whispered. "You look just like me." In the mirror, her reflection stood behind me, smiling. But when I blinked, it was gone, and the woman in the chair was me. The days blurred again. She talked, I listened. The house creaked and sighed around us like a living thing. I no longer questioned which of us was speaking when I heard a voice. Sometimes I woke in her bed wearing her robe. Sometimes I caught glimpses of a younger version of me standing in the hallway, watching quietly, waiting her turn. The neighbors stopped by once, a woman from down the street bringing flowers. She stared at me too long. "You look well," she said finally. "Mom, me?" Thanked her and closed the door. Afterward, I couldn't remember which of us had spoken. Tonight, the air feels still, expectant. The mirrors are uncovered again. They line the hallway, reflecting me from every angle. I walk toward the bedroom. She's there, brushing her hair in long, patient strokes. She looks up and smiles. "Ready?" "For what?" "For staying." I sit beside her. The mirror captures both of us side by side, our faces nearly identical now. The walls hum softly, the same rhythm as her lullaby. She takes my hand, places it over her heart. I feel it beating slow and sure. Then she guides my hand to my own chest. The rhythm matches perfectly. "Good girl," she murmurs. "You're home." Outside, wind rattles the windows. Inside, everything is still. The scent of lemon polish and old grief fills the air again, deeper this time, like a seal closing over my lungs. In the mirror, she brushes her hair once more. I mimic her perfectly. Our movements sync, seamless, one continuous breath between us. When she stops, I stop. When she smiles, I smile. And when she whispers, I whisper too. Our voices merging until they sound the same. Soft, patient, final, teaching me how to stay. When I pulled into the cracked driveway of my mother's house, the air smelled like wet dirt and dying lilacs. It was mid-October, gray light dissolving into drizzle, and every part of me wanted to keep driving, but I didn't. I hadn't been back since Dad's funeral 2 years ago, and now he was gone for good, and she was all I had left. The porch light flickered as if it recognized me. Mom stood in the doorway, small and straight-backed, her hair pinned the same way it had been since I was 15. Her lipstick was too red for the hour. When she smiled, it didn't reach her eyes. "Emma," she said. Just my name, but it felt like a summons. Inside, nothing had changed. The walls were still that pale yellow she insisted was cheerful, though the paint had begun to bubble around the baseboards. The smell hit me first. Lavender detergent layered over mildew and something medicinal, sharp and faintly metallic. The house felt preserved, like a photograph that never aged except for the dust. "You kept everything," I said. She looked around as if surprised by her own museum. "It's easier that way," she said, "less to let go of." That night I unpacked my bag in my old room. The wallpaper still had the faded constellation pattern I'd begged for when I was 11. My reflection in the mirror looked wrong. Older, yes, but the light made me look like I'd stepped into the past. The house creaked as it always had, settling into itself. I told myself the silence was comforting. It wasn't. I heard it for the first time just after midnight. A soft, steady rhythm through the vent above my bed. Inhale, exhale, long, measured, almost deliberate. I sat up, holding my breath, waiting for it to stop. It didn't when I whispered, "Mom." The breathing paused, then resumed, slower, closer, like whoever it was could hear me. In the morning, she was already at the kitchen table with her tea. "Did you sleep?" she asked. "I heard something," I said. "Oh, that old vent." She waved her hand. "It carries every sound. You used to keep me awake all night with that snoring of yours." "I don't snore," I said automatically. She smiled. "You used to." The day unfolded like any other. I cleaned the pantry, did a grocery run, tried not to notice that every clock in the house was stopped at 2:47 a.m. That night, the breathing came again. Louder this time. I pressed my ear against the vent and whispered, "Mom." The breathing stopped, then a whisper, soft and hoarse. "Good girl." I slammed my fist against the wall. The sound stopped. In the morning, she asked again, "Did you sleep?" Her eyes looked clearer, younger, almost bright. I said nothing. A few days later, I found the locks changed. Not all of them, just the front and back doors. My old keys didn't work. "I had to keep things safe," she said when I confronted her. "There are people around, strangers." "What people?" She shrugged. "You'd be surprised how they come in. Through cracks, through breath." Her words made me cold. That night I tried sleeping with my earbuds in. It didn't matter. The breathing came through the floor, through the mattress, a pulse that matched mine until I couldn't tell which belonged to whom. I woke at 3:12 a.m., drenched in sweat. The vent rattled. I grabbed my phone, turned on the recorder, and held it toward the sound. When I played it back, the air filled with her voice. Soft, rhythmic breaths, and beneath them, something else. A faint humming. The tune of Blessed Assurance, the hymn she used to sing while cooking Sunday dinner. The next morning, I asked her about it. She laughed too high. "That song? Oh, your father loved that one." Her face flickered, some memory pressing up against her skin. "Do you miss him?" I asked. She looked at me. He stopped breathing first. That night, I checked the vent in her room. It was spotless, newly polished. She was already in bed, lying flat, her hands on her stomach like a body prepared for burial. "Mom?" Her eyes opened instantly. "You shouldn't be in here." I heard. "You hear too much," she said, sitting up. "Some things are meant to stay inside walls." Her face was paler than I remembered, almost translucent. When I reached for her hand, it was cold, clammy. "Go to sleep, Emma," she said. "You sound just like him when you worry." That night, I dreamed I was back in this house at 6 years old, standing at the end of the hallway, listening to my parents fight. Only this time, there was no argument, just that breathing. Steady and patient, coming from every door, every vent, every mouth. When I woke, there was dirt under my nails and a faint taste of lavender in my mouth. I began to keep notes. Times, sounds, how many breaths between pauses. It became an obsession, something to measure my sanity against. Then one evening, as I folded laundry, I noticed her standing in the hallway watching me. She was smiling too hard, her lips trembling around the edges. "You're getting quieter," she said. "What?" "When you sleep." "I can hardly hear you anymore." She said it like it was a threat. That night, I locked my door. For the first time, she knocked. "Don't do that," she whispered through the wood. "It's bad to hold your breath in a locked room." The doorknob turned slowly. I watched it until dawn. When I finally opened the door, she was sitting in the hallway, asleep upright, hands folded in her lap, breathing in long, perfect sync with mine. The next morning, I found her in the kitchen making pancakes. She hadn't cooked in years. The smell of butter and syrup felt foreign. "Wrong in that sterile house. I was up early," she said. "I could hear you dreaming." She slid a plate in front of me. "You said his name." "My father's?" Her smile thinned. "He doesn't answer anymore. You shouldn't waste breath on the dead." The pancakes were raw in the center. I chewed anyway because her eyes never left my face. Later that day, I tried to call my friend Nora, just to hear another voice. No signal. The landline was dead too, Mom said. The world's noisy. You came here to rest. I began to notice small changes. My clothes smelled like her detergent even when freshly washed. My toothbrush moved sides of the sink. The picture of Dad had been taken down and replaced with a blank frame. At dusk, I caught her standing outside my bedroom door, head tilted as if listening. When she saw me, she said, "The house likes when you're still. I couldn't stand it." I drove to town. The roads were empty, fog rolling off the river. At the gas station, my card was declined. The cashier said the account was frozen, joint account with my mother. I hadn't remembered signing it over. When I came back, every clock in the house ticked again, but backward. That night, the breathing became unbearable. I shouted through the vent, "Stop it!" The sound stopped. Then a voice, "Don't make me breathe for you again." I bolted downstairs, but she was already there in her nightgown, standing by the front door. "You shouldn't shout," she said. "You'll hurt your lungs. Give me the keys." Her hand tightened around the apron pocket. "I can't let you go until you learn." "Learn what?" "To stay." The lights flickered. The air felt thicker, humid, full of her scent. She stepped closer, her pupils wide, voice soft. "When you left, the house forgot how to breathe. I had to keep it alive." I backed away. "You need help, Mom. I have you." I ran to my room, slammed the door, and shoved a chair beneath the knob. My heart was pounding so fast it drowned out everything, until I heard her breathing again right behind the wall. Not through the vent. From inside it, the plaster cracked. Something pressed from the other side, bulging the wallpaper outward. A whisper. "Inhale." I screamed and kicked the wall. Dust fell. The breathing stopped, then silence. I must have blacked out, because when I opened my eyes, it was morning, and she was sitting at the edge of my bed, stroking my hair. "Bad dream," she said. I pushed her hand away. "I'm leaving." Her face softened into something almost pitying. "You can't. You're already home." When I tried the door, it opened onto the basement stairs. The light switch didn't work. From below came that sound again. Slow, deep inhalations. I descended, each step colder than the last. The basement was filled with jars. Rows of them lining the shelves. Inside each, air bubbles, faint mist swirling in sealed glass, each labeled with a date. The oldest one read, June 6, 1989, Emma's first breath. I stumbled back, hitting something solid. Her. She stood in the half-light, holding an empty jar. "Don't be frightened," she said. "You can't live forever unless someone keeps your breath safe." The jar was open. I felt the air thin around me, the pull in my chest like suction. "Mom, stop. It's okay," she whispered. "Just breathe for me." One last time, I swung at her, hit the jar. It shattered, shards cutting her palm. For the first time, she bled. The sound that came out of her wasn't a scream, but a long, rattling exhale, as if something inside her had finally escaped. She crumpled. The house groaned, every vent sighing in unison. I ran upstairs, grabbed my bag, and fled into the fog. It's been 3 weeks. I'm staying at a motel off Route 17. Every night I keep the windows open just to hear the real wind. But sometimes, in the hush before dawn, I hear it again. Soft, steady, familiar. Through the bathroom vent, someone is breathing with me, perfectly in sync. I tell myself it's just the pipes, but the air smells faintly of lavender detergent. And when I record it, play it back, there are 2 of us breathing, one of them whispering, right against the microphone. That's my good girl.